What's up, Raptors fans? Welcome to the Warrants Report. I have a guest with me who I know a lot of you guys are familiar with, JJ Buckets. Thank you so much for being with me on today's video.
It is an absolute pleasure. And I mean, I hope they'd be familiar. I think I was here a week ago?
Definitely. So make sure to head over to his channel to subscribe. I'll leave his link in the comment section below. Make sure to subscribe to my channel as well. So JJ, let's jump right into it. We're going to discuss some players that the Raptors should absolutely avoid trading for. So do you want to go first, or do you want me to start it off with a little controversial? I wouldn't say controversial, but a player that a lot of Raptors fans have been talking about.
You know what? Let me jump into it because I feel like this is one that more or less I think me and you will probably be in unison about. Let's go. Easy one to kick it off here. Marvin Bagley. Let's keep him away from this team. I mean, listen, I don't feel like I'm the type of person to use the word or the expression rather, locker room cancer, like loosely. And with all due respect to him, and I get it, it's the Kings. It's one of the worst franchises in the NBA, if we're being honest about it. But Marvin Bagley, I feel like you've just heard so many reports of like the not backstage. What the hell is this, WWE? The locker room stuff that goes on. Like, obviously, you've seen the stuff in game where like he's refused to like check into games. He doesn't like his role, yada yada yada. I would rather just keep that energy away from this Raptors team. I understand the need for, bigs and guys that can play the 4, play the 5. And Bagley is definitely that. But ultimately, I think the reward is definitely not worth the risk in this one.
Yeah, I don't think there's absolutely much debate there. I think it's a little bit, as Raptors fans, I always see this. We really took Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol for granted. And I know Marc Gasol had that horrible series, but he still could have given you at least decent quality minutes on this team. And not obviously right now, but maybe last season. But talking about Marvin Bagley, it seems like at times Raptors fans, we just want any center that's out there. The rumor comes out that the Kings want to trade Marvin Bagley. Let's go after Marvin Bagley. Let's go after Hassan Whiteside. So it's just, we can't trade for every center. Marvin Bagley. That's exactly how I feel about Hassan Whiteside. It's like you look at numbers, but you don't actually look at their game. There's a reason why, like you said, Kings are a bad organization, but there's a reason why he's not getting minutes even on such an organization. I mean, this is what I don't even remember. It seems like he's been in the league forever, and he's on to 3 years, 4 years.
He's Luka Doncic's class. He will forever be remembered for being taken above Luka.
and Trae Young as well. So.
Oh God. I don't see it with Bagley. And if you ask me maybe about like a year or two ago, I would have said, you know what? Kick the tires on a buy low option that clearly, has talents. Like, I don't think you're going to deny that he has some sort of talent. Some sort of talent. What a compliment that is. But at the end of the day, this Raptors team, I just don't think needs that type of presence. Like I said, I don't use the term locker room cancer loosely. I think he's just that. I don't want, somebody, I apologize for the language, but bitching and moaning about roles, playtime, stuff like that, yada, 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 especially because, buddy, if you weren't going to get minutes in a good role on a bottom feeding team like the Kings, you're certainly not going to get it on a playoff team like the Raptors. So keep that straight the hell away from this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any disagreement of, one of the definitely players that the Raptors shouldn't trade for. And also, I genuinely feel like this, unless that player is a player that's going to have a huge impact on you. Like, let's say, like how we made a deal for Marc Gasol, and I know his contract didn't expire. I personally am not a big fan of trading for expiring contracts unless it's a championship or bust season, or like I said, if it's 2019 in a championship season and you really need this piece, then it makes sense. If the Raptors really want it, which I know they don't, they could just sign him off in the offseason. So Marvin Bagley, no doubter. Let's move on to my player that I don't want the Raptors trading at all, and I keep hearing his name so much from Raptors fans. And it's funny how we jump from kind of like a high to low with the Raptors this season when they were struggling. It's talking about trading Pascal, blowing it up, building around Scotty. Let's tank for a high pick. And now that we're doing great, all of a sudden people want to trade for Eric Gordon. I don't understand where these talks about Eric Gordon are coming from. Now, obviously, the Rockets are willing to move him. I just think it makes no sense. First of all, let's talk about the fact that he is 30. What is he? 30. Where does it say here? He is 33 years old. There you go. And he's 6'3". So he's going to be essentially a very small shooting guard coming off of the bench. Yes, he produces points, and yes, he shoots the three ball unbelievably well. 42% from the three and 14.2 points is amazing for Eric Gordon. But let's not act like he does not make 18 million dollars this season, 19.5 next season, and the following is going to be $20 million, which is a lot for, by the time his contract expires, a 36-year-old for someone of his talent. It genuinely doesn't make sense. I know contenders are going to be willing to throw first round picks. I personally don't think that's a great idea. He doesn't fit our timeline, and like I said, we're not going for a championship or bust season. Is he going to be a great bench piece for the Raptors? Absolutely. He doesn't play defense. He doesn't fit in our mold of 6'8", 6'9" guys. Now, I know not every player you're going to trade for is going to be 6'8", 6'9", but he is really undersized, and it just doesn't make sense for someone who's been injury prone, who's making a lot of money. So I don't know how you feel about this, JJ. I'll let you take the mic here, but I'm not big on trading for Eric Gordon.
You touched upon a lot of points that I would have brought up as well. Like the big one is, the reports have been out there that the Rockets want a first round pick for Eric Gordon. No chance in hell are you doing that if you're Toronto. Again, similar to what you said, the pressure isn't there enough to give up a first rounder for somebody of Eric Gordon's caliber who's has injuries, like I believe you've mentioned, who is 33 years old, will be 36 by the time his contract is up, and is getting paid close to $20 million a year. Is he putting up some numbers this year? Sure. You know what else he's on? He's on a Rockets team that is bad, and that somebody's going to put up those numbers on bad teams, and Eric Gordon is right there. Absolutely in agreement on this one. Eric Gordon, just nothing about him is worth the price tag for the Raptors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those players that most fans will agree that we don't necessarily trade for him, and that we're going to give up so many assets as well. So JJ, do you want to throw your second player into this talk here, who you would avoid trading for?
All right, folks, we've covered some nice, small, tame names. I am about to get into a bigger name here. I feel pretty strongly about this. I feel pretty strongly about this. I don't want Domantas Sabonis on this team.
Really?
I'll say it.
Give me your reasons. Give me your reasons of why you don't want him.
I'll give you the reasons first why I think some people like him, and I get it. I mean, he's a good passing big. That's fun. He's obviously somebody that can score down low. That's also fun. And he's obviously a good rebounder, talented in that department as well. Can you envision him playing the 5? Sure. Why I don't want Sabonis? Let's start with just the elephant in the room, first of all. Awful defender. Horrible defender. Not good on that end. I get it. You can at least try to kind of hide him amongst the Raptors defenders. They're obviously way good, but I get it. If part of your identity is going to be, being an elite defensive unit, it's the best way to not be that. Have somebody that is not a good weak side help defender, not a good one-on-one post defender, protecting your paint down low. So that's obviously just a major flaw. And frankly, the biggest flaw with the idea of trading for Domantas Sabonis is, oh boy, that starting lineup that many Raptors fans see as untouchable. Guess what? If you're pursuing Sabonis, it's not untouchable anymore. And quite frankly, if I'm choosing between the current starting lineup that they have or swapping out, I don't know, a Pascal or whoever for Sabonis, I'd rather keep what they have in place now than make the risk on Domantas, with all due respect.
Yeah, no, you definitely bring up some good points, JJ. I think I absolutely agree in terms of as basketball fans, we're very biased towards our own teams, and we always want your team to trade for, Domantas or Miles Turner without really giving up anything. So you actually mentioned a really good point when we talk about Domantas Sabonis. Personally, I'm not against the idea of trading for him. I think he would actually fit really well in terms of rebounding, in terms of passing. I think he'd do. I'm not saying he would be a Marc Gasol, because like you said, he's not a great defender. So a Marc Gasol minus the defense and moves a little bit faster. So I wouldn't be against it, but some of the reasons you mentioned, he's not a defensive big. He doesn't stretch the floor. And like you said, I'm not willing to give up any of our 5. Maybe a little bit of a hot take, But I'm personally just loving what we have with our small ball lineup. I know the Raptors do need a center, but personally, it's not Domantas Sabonis. He's listed at 6'11". His style of play, you would think he is 6'9". He doesn't play as big as he is. Like you said, defensively, he's not great. And I don't even know the money he's making. He's making what, 18,
His con-
22 million for
yeah,
another
his
season?
contract's not actually that bad, all things considered. But
Yeah.
just again, like if your hand is forced in that situation, it's like you're including somebody like a Pascal in that trade
Mhm.
talk. You're including somebody like an OG in that trade talk. And frankly, I say OG, but realistically speaking, Domantas Sabonis is an all-star. Domantas Sabonis is going to command a pretty healthy return going back. I just don't think the Raptors would want to pay that return, or frankly should pay that return. Like if the call is between playing Siakam at the 5 and playing Sabonis at the 5, at least Siakam gives you that defensive versatility, that switchability with your lineup. Obviously, the playmaking, like they're both good playmakers, they're both decent enough scorers. I just think, again, like the defensive end really speaks volumes for me here. Like if it's choosing between those two guys there, I would rather have just all the creativity that you could do with Pascal Siakam over just the more, I guess, traditional role of a Domantas Sabonis in that situation.
Yep. And I want to touch on one more thing. Like you mentioned, we'd have to trade in one of our starters. And assuming, obviously, Scotty is probably untouchable. No doubt about that. Raptors aren't trading Pascal for Sabonis, or at least you'd hope not. So let's pretend for a moment. Let's pretend for a moment between OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., Fred VanVleet. Let's assume one of them moves to the Indiana Pacers in a deal for Domantas Sabonis. Now you have Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, Domantas Sabonis as your front court, and not all of them are great three-point shooters. Like the spacing becomes a big issue, right? We know Pascal, Scotty love to attack the basket, and Domantas, I mean, he works in the paint as well. So how is that going to work out for the Raptors? The spacing is going to be horrible. The Raptors already struggle with zone defenses. So again, I'm not personally against the idea. I just think it's going to complicate things for the Raptors moving forward in terms of spacing, in terms of their defense. And I just like what they're having at the moment. So I personally would not move any of the 5 as well. So absolutely agree.
All right. What do you got?
Oh, this is one that a lot of Raptors fans may not like. Jonas Valanciunas is a center I don't think the Raptors should trade for. Now, I know we love the idea of trading for former Raptors. We heard, Raptors fans talk about Terrence Ross. We've heard about Jakob Poeltl's name being associated with the Raptors. And again, nothing wrong with Jakob Poeltl, but we as fans, we always fall in love with our former players. And it's funny because, we saw all of that hate going on regarding Fred VanVleet early in the season, Pascal Siakam. But when they're gone, then we're like, oh, yes, we should definitely, trade for this player. But Jonas Valanciunas, the reason I see this, he ticks off a lot of the things the Raptors look for in their center. He's close to, I believe he's 6'11", almost a 7-foot center. He's physically strong. He's not 230 pounds. He's obviously much heavier than what we have right now in Cameron Precious. And he shoots the three-point ball, which is great. But the biggest aspect we're missing about Jonas Valanciunas, he can't really move. I mean, let's be honest. He's slow-footed, right? He's not great on defense. And we saw what Marc Gasol was. Go ahead.
I wouldn't call him a bad defender by any means, but his lack of mobility, which is what I think you're trying to get at, definitely limits the role he can have on your defense.
Yeah, there you go. You worded it much better than I did. But like if you saw Marc Gasol was bad against the Boston Celtics in that series, and Marc Gasol is by no means a bad defender, it's just they put quicker players on him at the three-point line. They're going to do the same thing as Jonas Valanciunas. So essentially, you have that same problem that you had with Marc Gasol. Jonas Valanciunas isn't able to guard shooting guards or point guards or small forwards for the most part, unless he's in the paint. So I'm not big on the idea as, trading for Jonas Valanciunas. So I'll let you take the mic here. I don't know how you feel about Jonas Valanciunas or if the Raptors should trade for him.
Yeah, funny enough, like I just had the video on my channel where I was talking about center targets, and I had Jonas Valanciunas in the honorable mentions. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I kept him in the honorable mentions for some of the reasons that have been brought up. Just the lack of mobility, again, being a slow-footed player, not necessarily being the most like laterally gifted person in the world. Mm-hmm. I think you similarly, I guess kind of similarly to Sabonis, it limits the ceiling a little bit of what you can do defensively. And again, I don't think JV is a bad defender. I think down in the low post, like he's fine. I don't think that's where the issues come from. But again, just once you're getting into the playoffs, I think there's a very realistic way to play Jonas off the floor. Jonas off the floor. And I don't like that. Like, we've seen Rudy Gobert getting played off the floor because people bring him out to the perimeter. And quite frankly, Rudy Gobert is a much more switchable defensive anchor than, somebody like a JV would be. So yeah, like that's where my reservations came from on that video. And that's where my reservations would still come from here, where I like a lot of what he brings to the tables in terms of the scoring, in terms of the ability to stretch the court. He's now apparently a 3-point god. And obviously the rebounding is fantastic. Like, that would be, I think, the biggest plus that Jonas Valanciunas offers you, amongst the many. But it's a bit divisive because, again, with the pluses, I think you also get some negatives, and I feel like the negatives get overlooked a little bit too much when you're talking about his name, which, again, that's why I left him in the honorable mentions when I did my video. That's why I don't necessarily disagree with you here and bring him up. And especially, obviously, past that, again, with all of these, we have to consider, in my opinion, just asking price, right?
Yeah.
Jonas Valanciunas, like, what's the price on him? Because the Pelicans, I would think, for my money's worth, want that 10 seed. They want to be in the play-in. They want to at least give themselves a chance to be there in the playoffs. I don't know what's going on with Zion, but like, would you, like, I guess if he's coming back, okay, whatever. No, like, you want to show him that you're building something there if you still think Zion's that guy. And God, I feel so weird already having that conversation. I don't know what the situation is with Zion, his injury, and how, like, that's limited his playing, because when Zion's been on the court, Zion's been terrific, right? I don't think that's the issue, but obviously his weight and, like, not being in game shape and all the injuries and whatnot. But even if you're taking Zion out of the equation, like, you have a young team in New Orleans. You want to show that young team is growing, progressing, and getting yourselves to the play-in is probably a good way of at least instilling some faith in that locker room and amongst those players. So I don't really think the Pelicans would be chomping at the bit to, move on from Val, especially having just extended him, especially because if you are bringing Zion to the equation, I think having Val's ability to stretch the court besides Zion is actually very valuable. So I get price tag and a lack of mobility, and obviously defensive switchability, if we're going to use the buzzwords, really limit the ceiling on what Valanciunas can be for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it there. I mean, all of those points are exactly what I was trying to make. You just worded it a lot better. So, JJ, I'll let you take the mic here and give me your second player you want the Raptors to avoid trading.
We're actually at number three.
There's a reason I failed math 11 and 10. And I don't know how many maths I failed, but there's a reason why. Go ahead. That's your third player, I guess, or your third. Yeah.
So this one's going to be a little bit of a caveat. It's not one individual player, and it's not even necessarily, maybe things that have crossed Masai's mind, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. It's kind of going to be a groupings of players. And I'm going to, how do I want to put this so eloquently? Well, without, the cordialness or whatever you want to call it, it's shooting guards or quote unquote star players that are fake needle movers is how I would describe it. I'll get some heat for this, but I'm not on here to make friends, so I'm going to say it. The first one, I don't think much people are going to challenge me on. I'm talking about the type of players like a CJ McCollum that is probably going to be out there available for trade with Portland blowing it up. I like, in theory, adding CJ, sure, there's some assets that he brings to the team. Overall, though, does he move the needle enough that you want to surrender the assets that you're probably going to have to surrender for a CJ McCollum? No, you're not that desperate. You're a lot more forward thinking. See, and quite frankly, CJ is not that guy. Like I said, fake needle mover. And the other name here that I know Raptors fans won't want to hear as much, but and it's weird because I think my position on this has changed again. If you ask me probably about a year ago or ish, give or take, on whether or not I would like to see this player in a Raptors uni, Yeah. And here's the thing. I still wouldn't mind seeing him in a Raptors uni, but not in the circumstances that we are talking about now in terms of the trade deadline and making these kind of, desperation heaves, frankly, for a team that doesn't need them right now. Again, because I would still also personally put him in the fake needle mover category right now. Bradley Beal. Like, again, those murmurings have started happening because Bradley Beal.
Bradley Beal.
Hey now, I have the mic.
Go ahead.
Like those murmurings have started in Washington, right? Like they've obviously been falling off a cliff. Beal's time with Washington, if he wants to move, could be over. So the trade rumors are at least going to start back up. Here's the thing with Bradley Beal. Is Bradley Beal a fantastic NBA player? Yes. Is Bradley Beal somebody that would be an upgrade in theory over Gary Trent Jr.? Absolutely. Are the Raptors in a position where Bradley Beal is going to, jump them into the title picture? I don't think so. Is Bradley Beal a number one option on a championship team? No. Like, would adding Bradley Beal to the team be a good add in theory? Yes. But again, we're talking price tags, we're talking trades, and we're talking somebody that has the name value of a Bradley Beal. Like, whatever you're giving up in that trade, it's just not worth it for the team that you are, that has the future still so in mind. Again, you're not desperate for a title this season, and making a move for Bradley Beal, holy hell, you're probably going to overpay to some extent. So it's just right now for the team, it's not worth it. Like, you're telling me that not that I'm saying anybody is, but if you're arguing to me that adding Bradley Beal to this team, I don't know, at the price of like OG and Gary Trent Jr., just to throw some names out there, is going to make the difference between them winning a title this year, I don't think so.
Wow, that was sorry, JJ. Sorry to cut you off. Sorry. Are you done here?
No,
I got
more or less
so
done.
much to say. Okay, so you mentioned CJ McCollum, right? So CJ McCollum, I could definitely understand. Like, he's a great point production. He's not a greatest defender. He's making a lot of money. A little bit of a hot take. I'm not saying he's better than CJ. I'd probably prefer Gary Trent Jr. just because he fits into his role well. Not because he's better. Because he's better. Don't go me in the comment section and say, he's better. But I definitely think Gary Trent Jr., just with the timeline, just in terms of he understands his role a lot better. Now, that one I absolutely understand. Bradley Beal, though, that is a hot take. That is a fire take. Now, hold on.
I'm talking about it for this deadline. I am talking about it for this deadline. You're not adding him to this team at the price that you're going to give up and expecting to win a championship this season.
That's true. That is true. But you know what, Bradley Beal, and I was pulling the statistics up, and I'm absolutely shocked. He's shooting only 30% from the three and only 23.2% with the Washington Wizards, down good 8-9 points from last season, where he's averaging 31.3 points. Now, I don't know whether that's due to the fact that there's rumors about him not getting along with Spencer Dinwiddie. He's 6'9", 207 pounds. You can slide him at that shooting guard position. Obviously, you would have to give up a lot. Now, I'd have to agree with you that he's definitely not a number one option. But if you put him on the Raptors, that's a conference finals. Maybe a finals. Again, hot take. I know you'd probably need to upgrade the bench there a little bit. Man, that is just a perfect player for the Raptors. How many close games have we lost this year where they cannot find a bucket? And Bradley Beal would be that guy. Give him the basket. Let him work, and let him get those shots off, and just, oh man, Bradley Beal on this team would be perfect. I know you have to give up a lot. But if you get the chance to, I'd do it. I'd trade for him.
But again, that's my part of my whole thing is you're going to give up a lot. And quite frankly, again, hypothetically, and frankly, I think I'm even being generous by only saying, let's say it's Gary Trent Jr. in the situation with OG, that's the package, and then like whatever draft pick compensation. So what? Now we're moving on to, you have Fred VanVleet, Bradley Beal, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and whatever, let's say Precious Achiuwa starting at your 5. I don't think that's a championship team. I don't think that's better than some of the other, top of the Eastern Conference squads. I don't think you're getting past a team like Miami. I don't think you're getting past a team like Milwaukee. And if you want to debate me on that, that's fine. I don't think you're winning a title this year with that squad, especially with, as you said, how poor the bench is. And again, the term I was using for it was fake needle mover. And one more time, just to reiterate, because this is one of the bigger things in the equation for me here, it's just not worth it for the team. You're building something here. You're a young squad with plenty of potential moving forward. I think you like your starting five that you have right now. Do you shake it up in the future? Maybe when, guys like Scotty, OG, whoever are closer to their prime. Sure. Depending on, again, like what's going on with the team at the time. Right now, right this second, right this deadline, Bradley Beal does nothing for your team in terms of pushing them, to a championship team this season. Again, I don't even think that's your goal this season. So it's just, I wouldn't do it. Also, while I have the mic quickly, because this always irritates me, and I'm sure I brought it up before, but I will say it again. I will never understand why Raptors fans love Bradley Beal so much and then also hate James Harden so much. I get, like, if you want to talk the personalities and that's your factor, sure. But overall, there's such similar styles of players. I've never understood why Raptors fans love one and hate the other, especially when one is just like so tremendously better than the other. But that's just complete sidebar. James Harden gets too much hate.
Oh no, I absolutely agree. I think James Harden, it's like one of those things. It's just certain fan bases hate certain players. Like it's like Raptors fans hate Ben Simmons, but let's be honest. Why is that? It's based off of one bad play, one bad series. But we know they did the same thing with Pascal. Again, I'm not comparing the two players, but NBA fans have this habit of going hot and cold on players because of one bad game, one bad playoff series. I mean, NBA fans, Raptors fans in particular, were saying Julius Randle is what Pascal Siakam should have been last season. Now you see Julius Randle the way he's performing this season. And then if he performs well next season, they'll go back to saying that. So again, the NBA fans, we have a habit of just continuously going really high and really low very, very quickly. Now, Bradley Beal, I want to touch on that because Bradley Beal currently this season is making $33.7 million. Next season is making $36.4 million. Now, like you said, that is a lot to give up. I personally would not give up OG Anunoby and Gary Trent Jr. for Bradley Beal. I absolutely understand that you have
plus picks because those two alone aren't going to get that deal done.
I really,
absolutely. I think you've seen what some star players have been traded for recently, and obviously Bradley Beal has shown decline this season. Mm-hmm. Again, he still has the name value. He absolutely still has the name value that if he's a name out there, you're giving up probably multiple young assets and you're giving up definitely a haul of draft picks past that.
We're talking about Masai Ujiri, the man who gave up one first round pick for Kawhi Leonard. I know, look,
and the man that got finessed by Miami in the offseason for Kyle Lowry.
You think that was? Oh, come on!
I think he absolutely got finessed.
No.
I think he had a better deal at the death. Anyways, topic for another day. Honestly, I think that irks me as well. Is hey, don't get me wrong. And I've said this before on my channel. I've said this before privately. I will continue to say it. We have one of the best front offices in the league. I don't argue that. I hate this notion that Raptors fans talk about our front office like it's perfect. Mm-hmm. Our front office makes mistakes. Let's just be perfectly clear about that. So you know what? Like, I don't care if you're Masai Ujiri. If you're trading for a quote unquote big name like that, you're ponying up.
I personally think that OG
and if you're not, somebody else will.
I think OG and Gary Trent, especially given Gary Trent's recent value on the trade market, has just absolutely skyrocketed. But even OG Anunoby, I know he's not mentioned as one of the best 3-and-D, but he will be very, very soon. And I don't see the Raptors giving up more than a future heavily protected first or second round pick. But again, personally, I'm not doing that deal. If we're able to somehow get Bradley Beal onto the Raptors, I would love it. I think that's the perfect scenario as well. I don't want to go too much into it. I think he'd be our clutch scorer. We can, get that guy that can give our go-to baskets for the starters, because there's always uncertainty if Pascal is going to be that guy, if Fred VanVleet's going to be the guy, if Gary Trent is going to be the guy. But Gary Trent doesn't get enough touches in the clutch. But if OG is going to be that guy, we saw him once or twice, I think, in the last several games where he got a chance to, do that. But again, I think Bradley Beal would be perfect. But do you have anything to say? Or should we move on to my last player?
I think we can move on because, quite frankly, again, like you can talk about, it would be perfect. And we definitely disagree on the haul that it would take to get somebody that's that big of a name. But at the end of the day, I stand by the fact that it doesn't move the needle enough this season. And again, like he's only, with all due respect, going to get worse from here. So it's just not worth it in the end to give up your young assets for that temporary joy, because we're not talking Kawhi Leonard walking through that door. We're not even talking, I don't know, I flamed him in the video on my channel that you'll see, Damian Lillard. We're talking about Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is not number one on a championship team.
Yeah, I don't think there's any debate on that. I don't think he's number one option on the championship team. And like you mentioned, you did make some good points. It's, obviously it's not a championship or bust season where the Raptors absolutely need someone like Bradley Beal. So again, it's unlikely we trade for him. It's very, very unlikely we trade for him. But if the Raptors ever did get him, I think he'd be nice. But let's move on to my last player. And I want to do a similar thing as you did and not really mention a specific player. But I want to do that with the center position. Now, we hear a lot of names, and two names in particular I want to mention: Richaun Holmes, Daniel Tice. Now, I say these names because they may be decent, and affordability-wise, they won't cost you a lot in terms of trade value. You won't have to give up too much. But the reason I say this is because if the Raptors were to acquire a center, I think they should try and at least acquire a starting center, not one that will play a role similar to Cam Birch or Precious Achiuwa. That's my only take. I think if the Raptors do go for a center, you either need someone who can stretch the floor in three-point shooting, or someone who is close to a 7-foot center who's bigger and who can guard bigger centers, or you just need that paint presence there. So I'm not too big on Richaun Holmes. I know he's a very team-friendly contract. I know he may solve some issues in terms of scoring. The issue is going to be now, because we have our starting five of, we know the small ball lineup. Then you have Precious Achiuwa off the bench. We know Cam Birch is injured on and off. But do you essentially play, if we acquire those, Daniel Tice or Precious Achiuwa or Richaun Holmes and Precious Achiuwa together? So
But you said you want somebody at starting caliber, but you don't envision them in the starting lineup.
I don't envision any of those two as starters as a starting center.
No, but that's what I'm saying. You're saying you don't want a center that isn't like starter quality, but then
Yes.
you wouldn't want them in the starting lineup.
No, I didn't say I wouldn't. Well, they're not going to be starting. Let's be honest. Richaun Holmes, Daniel Tice, debatable. I don't see them starting. Nick Nurse is not starting those guys over Pascal, Scotty, OG, Gary, or Fred. So I'll let you take the mic. That's my personal debate. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for the Raptors to acquire a similar player, but also one that's going to be a bench piece for the Raptors. I think if you're going to acquire a center that's going to play off the bench, you definitely need someone, like I said, either can stretch the floor for you or is a 7-foot center that can guard bigger centers.
I don't know. I kind of disagree, where I think if you're happy with the starting lineup, which I would think the Raptors are, at this point, anything that you can get that's reasonable quality is icing on the cake. Yeah, like if you can improve your bench scoring with somebody like Richaun Holmes that can get you bench scoring, which is something that you sorely lack, I don't hate it. Again, you mentioned it. He's not a bad contract by any means, and you could always flip him in the future. I can't imagine that would be a huge issue. Yeah, I mean, I disagree in the sense that, again, like if you're good with what you have starting off at this point, the only route left is just kind of to upgrade the bench. And if you can get a center that's going to solve multiple issues for you, I think you take it. I'd rather them try to make a move for a center like a Richaun Holmes than just stand pat with somebody like Chris Boucher. Personally, I think there's more of an element of consistency with somebody like Holmes, and I'd rather take that coming off the bench for the Raptors if they want to be at least somewhat competitive in the playoffs than say, just keep things as is. And again, Boucher, decent chance, I guess, that he walks in the offseason. So in that regard, I think I disagree.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, you do make some good points. I think ultimately you could argue you probably move Chris Boucher for something else, like a small forward shooting guard. We do lack depth at that position just because we have Precious Achiuwa. Scotty Barnes and Pascal are going to be playing heavy minutes as well. So again, that's definitely debatable. Personally, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to acquire a mid-level or lower center just because you're essentially giving up assets to acquire 10, 15 minutes worth of. Again, I don't see them playing heavy minutes in the playoffs. And even in the regular season, they'll get maybe 20 minutes. I know that will give them a break. I know that'll give our starters a break, but I just don't see a deal that makes sense for the Raptors. You're going to, personally, I'm very high on Precious Achiuwa. I think that's going to hurt his development just because he's not going to be one getting touches. He's not going to be getting enough minutes. You can't pair him with Precious, or you can't pair Precious with Rashawn Holmes or Daniel Tice. So I think that's a weird pairing there. Neither of those guys could stretch the floor. So that's my personal opinion.
So you think Rashawn Holmes is a 10 to 15 minute guy off the bench?
And the playoffs. And the playoffs.
Even still, I mean, sure, you're entitled to that opinion. Yeah, I mean, there was some points there that I disagreed with. I'm blanking on it right now completely. Wow,
mid-level centers.
Oh, I guess that's kind of my thing here too, is like you have, guys like Scotty Barnes now that are going to be obviously such a big piece of your franchise on their rookie deals that are obviously not costing much. And in general, I think most of your contracts outside of Pascal Siakam are very team friendly. That if your concern is just the money, I don't think it's the worst concern in the world, because again, you can always flip this person in the future. And again, in most of these situations that we're talking about, if we're talking assets, I don't really think they're talking big assets in terms of what it's going to take to acquire these guys. Again, going back to what I earlier said, it's icing on the cake. And if you're buying low, again, with the contracts that you have in terms of, OG being on an affordable deal, in terms of Fred, frankly, being on a steal of deal, in hindsight, Scotty being on his rookie deal, Gary Trent Jr. being on a relatively affordable deal, you can swallow a subpar contract or two if you're not surrendering much to get it. I personally don't mind that whatsoever.
Yeah, no, you definitely make some good points. I mean, if you're able to get some, players that are not going to cost you a lot, I just think in terms of, like, you don't want to make a deal for the sake of making a deal. That's just, I think, what I think personally, and for the several reasons I've mentioned, but I don't think we'll agree on this topic. We do have our own personal views. JJ, is there anything else you'd like to see regarding this, or anything about the players we've talked about specifically?
About the players that we've talked about specifically. Yeah, Bradley Beal's not a needle mover at me.
Well, let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. But JJ, this has been a pleasure. We did a video for his channel as well, which will be coming out shortly. So make sure to head over to JJ Bucket's channel to watch our collaboration. I'll leave the link in the comment section to make sure to subscribe to his channel as well as my channel if you haven't already subscribed. So JJ, thank you so much for being on this channel. This was so much fun, and definitely look forward to doing another video with you. So
absolutely. Of all the Raptors fans I know, and I know a lot, you're definitely my favorite one to chat to. So always a pleasure. Great at what you do. So thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. So that will be it for today's video, guys. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.